I know nothing about roasting. I'm intrigued by it, but it's a rabbit hole that, like I mentioned when we first met, I refuse to go down onto because I'm scared that I might love it.
This is what we affectionately refer to as Home 2.0. So the original iteration of the home machine was 50 grams. Mm-hmm. So we manufactured the machine in 50 gram iteration from 2017 until 2020. And then in November of 2021, we released Home 2.0, and it has 100 gram capacity. So we listened to what the feedback was from the home consumer, and we looked to increase the volume that could be roasted because 50 grams isn't very much for the home consumer. 100 grams is much better. So we doubled the capacity, and the size difference is a centimeter. The Home 2 is a centimeter taller than
double the capacity, so that's quite impressive.
Yeah,
so it's probably worth mentioning that the 100 gram capacity refers to the green coffee, and also once you roast it, it loses a little bit, and you get a little bit less coffee.
Yeah, depending on the roast recipe that you choose, you might end up with 90 grams of coffee or 95 grams of coffee at the end.
So in that case, the 50, I can see how that would be a couple of shots of espresso, really.
Yes, exactly.
So maybe a little
maybe
bit
3.
But
50 grams of coffee, you can cup a couple of times or have a couple of bowls, and then you could still make a pour over if you wanted to make a further evaluation. Whereas 100 grams, that's enough to supply enough coffee for at least a couple of days, depending on your coffee consumption. So now we have the 100 gram capacity machine. In 2021, when we released this, we decided to, because we'd done so much user research, and from the very beginning of IKAWA, we've always been user-centric. We're always listening to feedback from the consumer. We do that in an organized way through user research interviews and market research, as well as looking to our customer support and our customer service and seeing trending issues that are coming up or trending suggestions that have come up from the user. We refer to the IKAWA Home as a home roasting system. So the system is green coffee that we purchase and we supply to the home consumer, and it's the roaster and it's the app. So I'll show you what the app looks like. So when you sign in, the app looks a bit like this, and you can toggle between coffees and recipes. So recipes are the individual programs, whereas the coffees are all IKAWA coffees that have been added to the app that you can choose to add to your own experience. To add a coffee, you press the plus button, and then you can either choose an IKAWA coffee or you can add your own coffee. So adding your own coffee, you can choose either to choose a natural or a washed. You can enter your coffee name, and there's 30 generic roast recipes ranging from light to dark in each one of those processes.
And this is any green coffee that get from anywhere, so I'm not locked into just buying IKAWA coffee.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that is a solution for someone who doesn't want to be locked into buying IKAWA coffee. However, I will say that
so I use lock-in in a certain way. I use lock-in, and that term has a bad connotation, but in your case, my understanding is that the more visibility you have over the coffees, you have a thorough selection, and then you perfect the recipes for that coffee. So it's not really a lock-in, rather than it's kind of a support.
Yes. Yeah, so with choosing the IKAWA coffees rather than the generic ones, I do all the heavy lifting, and I create all of the roast recipes that are available for each IKAWA coffee. And there's nothing to say that you could say, okay, well, there's Kenyan coffee that IKAWA has put into the app. I can use those roast recipes to roast my own Kenyan coffee. There's nothing to say that you cannot do that. It's actually encouraged. I would encourage a user to look at our roast recipes that we've already created for coffees that are similar, so that they can copy our homework. and that's totally fine. I completely 100%.
When you say similar, we're looking at things like region, altitude, and a few other factors.
Yes, absolutely. So, do you want to choose a coffee to roast?
I think it was the Burundi that.
So, I think an interesting thing about Burundi. So, this is where IKAWA. So IKAWA means coffee in Kirundi. So Andrew grew up in Burundi.
Okay.
And so that's where the name comes from.
Nice.
Entirely.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, do you want to try the Burundi?
Yeah.
Okay. So the largest police station in Europe is around the corner. So
Nice and quiet.
yeah, it's very quiet. Let's see if it's all right. Yeah, there we go.
Cool. So how are we doing?
You could do 100 grams.
grams?
Yeah. You can also do 50 grams, like 50 to 100 grams in the machine. It has the capacity to do that.
I was going to ask if there's a minimum limit, and I take it it's 50, right?
Yeah. So I'll show you on the inside of the machine, there's something called the bean ramp, which can, if there's not enough mass inside the machine itself, it can act as a ramp for the green coffee to shoot out of the machine if there's not enough mass held in. So I don't think that coffee has been added to my library.
I don't know. We should have tried a different one.
No, it's okay. Let's show the experience of adding it to the library. So you want to press the plus button.
Okay.
And then
scan the QR code, presumably?
There you go.
Okay.
So that's the coffee. So you can see it's got the producer, the varieties that are in there, the process, its elevation, flavor notes, and then you can read more about the Matara Hill washing station itself if you'd like to, or you can just add the coffee. And now you can select done, and where is it? There it is, Matara Hill. So you can, if you were to choose this coffee to roast your own, you could say, "Oh, I've got a coffee that is a similar elevation. I'm going to use roast recipes."
Got it.
So select your recipes. So scroll down a bit. You can see that there's 2 IKAWA recommended recipes. So there's one for filter and one for espresso that are recommended.
So espresso.
Okay, so that's the recommended one, but you can select edit if you don't want medium dark, and you can select the roast color that you'd like.
Cool. So we do light?
Sure. And you can also do light, medium, or high development.
Can you explain the difference between these?
Yeah, so low development, you're going to have, so you can also see the taste descriptors here. So select medium or high. Medium or high, and see how it changes a little bit in the flavor expectations.
Nice. So let's go with high then.
Okay.
I think I prefer this.
Okay, so then you can save it and then create new recipe. And
Coffee Nerdery.
yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Save. All right, so now that roast recipe is in the library and we can use it. So we go back out of here. All right, so now it's in your recipe. So select it and scroll down a bit and send to the roaster. You'll see it change. There it is.
Cool.
It's on the roaster. So you can see it there. And you can go ahead and put the green coffee into the machine. And we want to keep the jar in here because that's going to collect the chaff during the roasting process. So you don't need to preheat at all. It's actually beneficial to not preheat because of the way that the IKAWA Home applies heat. It only uses an inlet sensor to apply heat. So if you were to heat up the roasting chamber, there's no residual heat that really hangs out in there, not significant enough to actually roast the coffee. So you can dose the coffee in there, so by twisting the doser. You can see it's indicating that the dose is still open. And it's also showing you on that app as well. And now it says, okay, so you've added your beans, and press the go button. And now you're roasting. So you can watch the coffee spin around. So it's still preheating. So as soon as it's finished preheating, it will then start to spin around and follow the roast recipe.
And it's not loud at all, as in like obviously you can hear it and it's, it makes a sound, but it's not loud. It wouldn't really, it's definitely not louder than a silent grinder or
the maximum decibels that we have measured is 88 decibels.
Okay.
And that was really high fan speed, high fan speed, and a really dense coffee. Denser coffee makes a louder sound.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I just assumed that the roaster will always make the same amount of noise because the roaster doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So the material that is at the density of the material will affect the sound slightly. So what's happening is cold air is being brought in here through, and you can feel the air being brought in. Mm-hmm. So that's cool air being brought in. There's a chamber in here which has a heating element, which is then heating the air at a very high heat to follow this program that has been predetermined.
Okay. And we can see it, we can follow it along as it's
exactly.
happening.
So it's counting up. You can also change it to count down. So if you wanted to know how much time you've got in between your roasts, you can change it to be count down rather than count up. And then you can also learn a little bit more about the roasting stages. So you can see the drying is happening here, the yellowing is going to start here. First crack you can expect around 4 minutes and 55 seconds, and then development time, that's when we're considering that, you know, there's more sugar browning happening, and then it will begin cooling down at 7 minutes and 30 seconds. And so you'll be able to see the difference in the coloration after 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It will be more pronounced. So we sell the guided edit coffees in 500 gram increment. Okay. So you could potentially roast one coffee 5 different ways if you'd like to, or you can choose one roast recipe, roast it entirely the same way.
Yeah, and I suppose this is the bit, you can save profiles presumably as the recipes we just did, and then you can just repeat that.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So there's a small amount of memory on the machine itself, so it will save whatever was last on the machine.
Okay.
So you can, if you had one roast recipe that you loved and you thought was the best roast recipe that's ever been written, you could just keep that on your machine and not have to link your device with it.
Lock the machine, make sure no one
Yes. Yeah, first crack is happening right as expected. Yeah. So the idea is that, you know, everybody who has an IKAWA Home, who has the IKAWA Home app, if they were to buy this coffee, they'd have the exact same experience as the app tells them they will have. So consistency across all of the home machines is really important, and consistency of the coffee itself is really important as well. So I have a 25-point quality control system that I've implemented for green coffee. And so that's something that I perform once a month to check that all of the green coffee is up to scratch, and we don't purchase anything that has any defects. So it's pretty much the most defect-free green coffee available on the market. And so now it's cooling down, the light's indicating it's now finished with the roast cycle. So now it's pulling lots of cold air, and you can feel it's really, it's at basically 100%, bringing in as much cool air as possible to cool the coffee down as quickly as possible to stop the roasting process. Because similar to if you've ever baked cookies in the oven, they'll continue to bake when they're on the tray. Yep. So you want to take them out just before they're done. So it's a similar concept with coffee, is it will continue to roast if it's not cooled down very quickly. So on large industrial machines, you know, it might take 10 minutes to cool down a roast of 10 to 15 kilos. So it is continuing to develop in the cooling tray a little bit. So with this, you're able to stop it a lot quicker than you would on like a production machine. All right, so now it's completed. So got another silicone ring here. And so this is a collection jar. So you want to swap out the jars?
This is warm.
Yeah, it should fit snugly in there. And then press the go button. All right.
Roasting finished.
Yes.
Should I pick it up?
Yeah. And then if you'd like, you can just pour it in there. And how does that feel?
Very satisfying.
But is it cool to the touch? Yeah.
Yeah, that is incredible. I'm disproportionately excited about this.
I love this for you.
Honestly, it's really, really cool.
Yeah. So would you say that that looks like a light roast to you?
Medium light?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an American light.
Okay. Like, yeah, I've had lighter, but then the lighter you go, the harder it is to extract, and yeah.
Yeah. It's also because this coffee is Bourbon as well. Bourbon tends to have a higher sugar content, and it looks darker than it actually is.
Interesting.
So we chose this terminology to talk about acidity. So you might have noticed that it said lively acidity, and then it went to smooth acidity, because you cannot have a coffee without acidity. And that's something that a lot of people struggle to understand, because acid is a negative word. Whereas like in coffee, acidity is a pleasant word. So we wanted to include pleasant words to describe that sensation, that either sharpness or that lively sensation. Like someone once told me that a coffee without acidity is like a champagne without bubbles. So when I think about acidity, I think about that liveliness and like how champagne bubbles kind of dance on your tongue. So. It was initially designed so that you would just fill the doser itself with 100 grams.
Okay.
But because on the first iteration, it was fine for 50 grams. But if you were to fill it straight up, it's about 120 grams, which is like not ideal.
And also, yeah, coffees will be different, right, in terms of volume.
Exactly.
Denser coffees.
Which is part of the reason why we developed this jar. I'll tell you about that after you get this roast going. Excellent.
So it's almost like, what did I forget to do?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it's meant to take all of the guesswork out of roasting coffee. We believe that everyone should have the opportunity to be able to roast their own coffee at home. We think see how it's that much faster to heat up is because it's a slightly different roast recipe. So it's a lower starting point, so it didn't have to heat up as much. Yeah. So, everyone should have the opportunity to roast coffee at home, but in a consistent and repeatable and easy way. Everything should be easy. There should be absolutely no difficulty whatsoever. But there are people who want to make it more difficult for themselves.
From the complicated level first, it's less enjoyable, and then people will give up and find it frustrating and everything. Whereas, yeah, this is really, really nice.
Why we've developed this app is because it helps keep the user engaged, keeps the consumer engaged in roasting coffee. Yeah, right on cue, right on time for first crack. Very helpful. So yeah, if you want to switch over. And this is my favorite magic show to show to people. Yeah. Is making sure to watch the beans spin from the top when you press the button.
So I'll press the button.
and it's magically empty.
And
It's
roasting finish.
done.
Very nice. Let's see the difference in color.
Can you tell the difference? So you can see there's less wood grain texture and there's more wood grain texture on this one. You can also see how there's more of the endosperm that is present in the crack of the bean, and there's less because the bean is opened up a little bit more and it's been shed in the roasting process. So these were guided edit. So guided edit, you have 15 roast recipes for filter and 15 for espresso, so you were able to edit it more freely. Whereas curated is there's only one recipe for filter and one recipe for espresso.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, let's do that.
Do you want to roast? So there's two here. We have the Cup of Epsom Brazil, and we've got the Finca Pradera, which is the strawberry infused coffee.
So we'll just
Okay, okay.
How amazing is that?
I know. Isn't it incredible? The owner of CoffeeNet, he produces this coffee. So CoffeeNet in Colombia. So he's doing all kinds of amazing stuff. I try and choose to work with producers that are already in our network, because we do sell IKAWA Pro to quite a lot of coffee producers and coffee importers and exporters. So we look to our network first, but I always look to our consumers to make sure that we're supplying green coffee that the consumer is looking for. I also look for trends as well. So like infused coffee is a growing trend in coffee production. So I wanted to get a coffee that I thought would resonate really well with the home consumer. So that's part of the reason why I chose this coffee, because I did have options to buy a passion fruit, mint, peach, mango, pineapple. I'm trying to remember all the different ones, but I had quite a lot of options to purchase. But I thought the strawberry one was the most refined, so that's why I have the Colombia.
Yeah, I would get lost in so many options, and it's how do you go about that?
So I have one roast recipe that I begin with, and it's like my golden roast recipe. And I will pay attention to how the coffee is moving in the roasting chamber, how quickly it's developing. Are there any aromas that are coming out during the roasting process that are less desirable or more desirable? And I'll tweak the roast recipe depending on those kinds of factors, so that it is the most ideal for the method at which I would use it for. So if I were looking to roast a filter of a really, really fine coffee, I would look for a roast recipe that brings out all the best qualities in that coffee, that really make that coffee shine, the roast notes don't hide any of the coffee, that show everything. And for espresso, I'd look for something that would be a little bit more versatile and handle stovetop preparation to, fine commercial machine preparation. Someone had bought this coffee and they were concerned that the aroma would last in the machine and affect their other coffees, because they were like, it's so strong, why it must affect the roaster forever, but it doesn't. The machine, the chamber is spun aluminium that's PTFE coated, so it's completely food safe, and it doesn't retain any odors. So you could roast like the funkiest coffee in that and there will be no residual